You approach the crypt of the Underking. Roll a stealth check. That's right, kids. Today we're talking about tabletop RPGs here on Behind the Curve. The printer won't work. As if the printer has a choice.
I grudge against you.
You're even including non-intelligences.
Yeah, but you're still including intelligences, so I just say it's still a form of anthropomorphism.
Wait, no, it isn't. That was deep.
Yeah. So I think what we're getting here is...
Yes, I agree. I think it is good in as much as a literary...
Other RPGs! At least I do.
Alright, so... The Scourge of Existence for the white suburban mother. The pearl-clutching horror that lurks in your basements, your attics, and now on the internet because everybody's gonna sneeze on each other or drool in the Cheetos.
But especially in the basement.
Yes, it's time to talk about the tabletop RPG. I'm Andrew.
And this is Matt.
Yes. So, we are coming to a topic that is shockingly still controversial in our local circle of reality.
Probably the least controversial thing this week, considering that, though, which is, good to get your mind off the controversial things.
It is.
For other controversial thing was controversial things.
Yes. In case you've been living under a rock, this is the week that we vote for this president thing.
Yeah.
Yep. So, RPGs.
Yeah. I think we started with RPGs with Pokemon, though. At least I did. Definitely my first RPG was probably that. Or, I don't know what my first one was. I was interested in Earthbound because my cousin talked to me about it and gave me a SNES emulator to kind of like mess with it. That was cool.
Right. I do remember you telling me about that. But for me, it was definitely Pokemon. Pokemon was the first game I ever played. It was Pokemon Emerald on my silver Game Boy Advance SP.
What year was this?
2006, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, Pokemon Emerald was for me. Like, that was kind of my touchstone, and I didn't even know what an RPG was at that point.
No.
But
there's some hipsters out there who do not think Pokemon is an RPG.
I think it is, but it's different. Like, it's not your traditional RPG. Which is good.
Yeah, it's definitely come to think about it, I probably got my interest in animal things and stuff from that, and I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I was more interested in things growing up, like Brave Little Toaster and Toy Story, though. So probably Pokemon, I don't know. Mystery Dungeon was the best because then the Pokemon really were talking and anthropomorphic and had abilities and stuff.
I like Mystery Dungeon. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is such a fun game. Great music, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I should just listen to that instead of political stuff. Now
Yes.
See, that's why we have friends. Break us out of our humdrum existences.
Every time we hear a political commercial, we start blasting the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon music. I think it's good.
Well, we had to wait for it to come on before the political commercial, but then that'll end after Tuesday, so that'll be fine.
Yeah.
The attack ads are like you can't do any time to verify.
Attack ads are the worst. I will be very, very happy when I can watch a YouTube video without getting a political ad first.
Look, I'm a War and Terror kid. What? I said I'm a War and Terror kid. I'm not that old. Like I remember when every single ad was an attack ad.
Yeah.
But anyway.
That got dark fast.
Yeah.
So, speaking of terrorists, Pokemon.
I was saying like how it was interested in animals having their own life before.
Yeah.
Right, but for me, I think it was also Redwall, though.
Yeah, for me it was also Redwall. Redwall was a large part of why I ended up, writing fantasy and why I ended up believing in anthropomorphism as a useful literary tactic.
I think it's in Narnia too, was that?
Narnia did make use of it, but I think for me, the number one thing was probably Redwall, I think. When I was little.
Remember, didn't we, like, when we first met each other, that co-op, I'm bringing this up, co-op at homeschool, we kind of, like, I know we would pretend to be Pokemon trainers, but did we pretend to be Pokemon themselves? I don't remember that.
I don't remember.
Oh no, I know where it started for both of us. This is not an RPG. It's a rabbit trail, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Crossing.
Animal Crossing! Yes, okay, no, you're right, it is Animal Crossing. Do you remember when we were trying over and over and over again to get Wisp the ghost to show up?
Where was he again? What did he do?
Oh, I don't remember exactly what he did. He only showed up, like, on Halloween. Oh, and...
Jack and another character, I think, who showed up at City Hall.
Yeah.
I don't think...
No, you're right. Then when did Wisp show up?
I don't know. I think I know who you're talking about, though. But yeah, like, we used to, like, kind of play with, like, the in-game mechanics and, like, try to bug Mr. Rossetti just to see what his dialogue would be, because we didn't have very good access to the internet back then, and we were like, to erase our files so it wouldn't be, like, consequences.
Yeah, no, that was fun. And I remember I was so jealous your house had a basement. There.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't much of one.
Yes.
Now we're the one who doesn't do Animal Crossing. Like, shout out to my friends on the West Coast, Vane Flores and Castellanos and John Castellanos. Like, you guys, like, are, like, off doing your Animal Crossing thing in your post-college life, and, like, I could be interacting with you with your friend codes and stuff, and, like, I do not do Animal Crossing. Like, that's a way we could stay in touch, though.
Yeah, no, Animal Crossing. I love Animal Crossing. I haven't played it in a long time, but...
The new one is New Horizons, or whatever it's called.
Yeah. Do people like it? I mean, like, I think people like it.
People have called it the Pokemon Go of 2020 because it's for the indoors. Like, I've heard it's very customizable. Like, you do it up to you. By the time we get into it, everyone else will be done with it.
Are you kidding me? That's how we get into everything.
Yeah, we're behind the curve.
Yeah, we are behind the curve.
Yeah.
So, this ultimately this is sort of our path into, RPGs, which somehow opened the pit into Furdom. But so for us, like, our experience with RPGs, we started out as purely just
Pokemon, and we didn't know it was happening to us at the time, and we didn't think of it in terms of playing a role in the purest sense. Like, we knew we were playing video games, but like there's items and there was HP hit points and there was defense points and stuff like that, but like it came automatically, it wasn't very complicated. I know there's a new battle system every generation for Pokemon, or every game really, but it's very simple.
Ours, like, because we both entered Pokemon in the in Generation 3.
Yeah.
We
back when it was starting to kind of fade, millennials got done with it anyway.
It was kind of, it's kind of like, I know Generation 3 is kind of the considered to be like the golden age of Pokemon. It was kind of also like the end of the, like, when Pokemon was at its, like, absolute highest, like, sort of cultural capital. Though I think it's had something of a resurgence lately.
I kind of read that more as the late 2000s, late 90s, because then you had second generation of the anime start, and then it kind of peaked with Pokemon 2000. Because I remember there being I really remember Pokemon 2000 coming out. Probably one of my early, at least from VHS tapes I remember watching at the time. And I actually might have not been allowed to watch those commercials. I'll just leave it at that. But like, I just remember actually Pokemon 2000 coming out, kind of, sort of, and seeing. I definitely just remember on Cartoon Network seeing another rabbit trail. Cartoon Network promos for Pokemon and stuff.
I remember those. I remember when they used to run the Adult Swim cartoons.
Toonami?
Yeah, like, I remember ads for Toonami.
Because you said you remember Inuyasha, I believe, and maybe Dragon Ball Z, or I forget what else.
No, I remember seeing parts of Inuyasha, like, when I wasn't supposed to be watching TV. I remember seeing parts of Inuyasha and never being able to get it out of my head.
Again, with the Wolf Boy.
Yeah. So you can see where we started. But so, this is like, and then we partially moved on to Final Fantasy, or like, or you moved on to Final Fantasy.
Earthbound 2, like I said, which was kind of like a predecessor to Pokemon. Like, it came out in 1994, right before Red and Blue came out. And yeah, Final Fantasy was the thing that got me into capital RPGs, honestly. And was that for you too?
For me, I think for me, the one that finally, I think probably really put me in for RPGs would have been, was... You know what? I think it would have to be Radiant Historia was the one that put me in for Atlas's somewhat semi-lost masterpiece for the DS. It was just an excellent RPG.
Yeah, I think 4 was the first one I played for Final Fantasy, and I think I bought it at GameStop, and I literally played it during Hurricane Sandy, and that was one of the most interesting times of my life. I remember reading like Chick-fil-A wrapped up in its pouch over a fire, and like playing Final Fantasy 4. My grandmother's energy I got from her being at her house, like going to grandma, talking with them, charging my DS, coming back and playing, eating Chick-fil-A. Yeah. Talking about being a born terror kid, that's basically it.
I know. I played Mr. Dungeon through Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah. See, if we ever do our own low version, we didn't start the fire. That's gonna be 2012's big thing.
No, I didn't play that through. I played Mystery Dungeon through Irene. I played Final Fantasy 1 through Sandy.
Oh, okay, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so weird. I didn't even know that until you told me just now.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, that's cool. Because I'm remembering it now. I think I went to a Greek-style diner for the first time too, outside of Northeast Philadelphia too.
Yeah, that was the week that Mitt Romney came to campaign in Bucks County.
Oh, okay. I don't remember. I might have remembered that because we didn't have the internet, so I probably did.
Right.
Or maybe my grandparents talking about it.
That was a while ago.
My great uncle. I don't remember. Yeah.
That was like a big deal because like the first time since Bush, I thought somebody running for president had come to the county or something like that.
Yeah, and now Trump came to Newtown 4 years ago. He probably came today, so it's much more common.
A couple stops, I think, if I remember the headline in the local paper right.
Yeah, I think it was that.
Anyway, our little kitty corner of the world.
So yeah, after that, I wasn't into tabletop till you started doing it, and right now I can't really do it to make matters short.
Yes.
But how did you start? Because like, that's a whole world in itself. That's kind of different. Like just segueing into regular tabletops.
It is. So tabletop was our way. So I think the person I first ever heard about Dungeons and Dragons from was your dad.
Really?
Who's entirely the entire fault of my tabletop gaming is your father. No, but no, I remember he mentioned it in a conversation, saying he was like, oh, it was like there was like this old game, and he said it was really cool, and then he just kind of like left it at that.
Yeah.
And then like I don't know, then there was some talk about.
He never told me.
Yeah, no, like there was some kind of talk about not the Jack Chick track, but the Adventures in Odyssey episode.
Yeah, actually, which I bought. I think it was actually a Adventures in Odyssey. Here's more nostalgia. Album I bought at Chap in Harrisburg, which is my mom allowed me to buy any adventures in, like 3 Adventures in Odyssey things from there every year or something crazy, which is a whole lot.
Yeah.
But I bought like one which was like a throwback album, like a release, a port in video games.
Yeah.
And it was Castles and Cauldrons Part 1 and 2, and that really freaked me out because like back then, like it's like now I'm like that guy who doesn't want to watch Has Been Hotel, but back then I was like extra scared of demons. Like I didn't have my closet was completely open, had no door. My bed was literally like to the bottom of the ground, but I was scared of demons, and that was one of the things that made me scared. But did you listen to that episode?
I didn't. I only ever heard about it secondhand.
Oh.
But so I had just always, I remember that memory of your dad saying like, oh, there were all these different cool things that you could do in the game, but it's like not a game you play anymore. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. And I didn't even think about it until I overheard people talking about it at a class I had. It was actually at my debate class. I overheard people talking about it, and I asked them, like, oh, what are you guys talking about? They're like, oh, you know, we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like...
This is pre-college, right? Sorry.
What?
This is pre-college?
Oh, yeah, this is high school. So,
Right.
I looked it up, and I was like, okay, this actually looks pretty cool, and I was researching it, and it was right before college. And I remember I brought it up to you.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, a while back, and you know, this is the freshman year of college, and this was when we went to Barnes and Noble.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And the cashier thought we were a couple because I kept talking about showering.
And what ended up happening was I bought the Monster Manual for Edition 5 and the starter set, and I think maybe one other small thing.
Yes, which you actually ended up never using.
Yeah, well, I gave it to you. You have both of those things now, right?
I do have them both in my library, but that didn't quite work out.
Did you use it for Space Labyrinth Lord, or you have yet to use it?
I've used the Monster Manual for inspiration.
No,
I haven't used any. I haven't used the starter set really.
Well, it's entertaining though. It's okay, good. You use the Monster. It's entertaining too. You just read through it, even if you're not using it as a stats manual.
It really is. It is, and the art in there is always top notch. But to go back to sort of like that was like, and so we had kind of had this idea that never really got anywhere, but I was eventually able to find some friends who were willing to play or able to play. So I got together with a really good with my girlfriend and a really good friend from college and a good friend from college's best friend from high school who had dungeon mastered before, and that's how we found our first group. And our group has shrunk and gone way up. I mean, we've played with everywhere from 3 to 8 people on a regular basis.
Oh.
My leadership has gone back and forth between apparently spectacular to terrible. We've switched around DMs a bunch, but yes, we did eventually settle on the Pathfinder system because that was the one that my really good friend from high school knew how to use, and it was cheaper than D&D.
You mean
what?
Pathfinder?
Pathfinder, yeah. Pathfinder is a
Dungeons
almost...
3.5.
What was that?
Which is Dungeons and Dragons 3.5.
More or less, yeah. Like it's pretty much the same exact thing. So yes, we've tried many experiments, but that's kind of where we ended up. And it has been largely really, really successful.
The way you're describing it almost sounds like I kind of started it, just I didn't do anything after that. Like me wanting to do it and buy those things. And he started, because I wanted to be the DM. I don't know if you remember.
I do.
I wanted to get Robbie and his sisters involved, but like it shrunk down. There's another thing that prevented it. Like it shrunk down to me and you again after Robbie didn't want to play, which is like whatever. Like he didn't know what he was doing anyway. So like,
yes,
I don't like fault him or like I'm mad he didn't want to play. Like
yeah, no, that was our. So that was our thing, and then and also part of the reason that we picked Pathfinder was to avoid the name stigma of Dungeons and Dragons in our community.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of segueing into the controversy section, which
yes,
you can have fun with.
Is big.
Yeah, the world. I think also role playing turns. And what a lot of people don't think of is like the word role play. That phrase, rather, is something that people don't think of. Like it has like some not safe for work connotations to it.
It does.
Like you. This abusive fantasy of like being an identity that like God didn't intend you to be, like using it as like kind of schizophrenia, like identity manipulation rather than like escapism, like good old fun, or even character building. which I think is what it is.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. No, it's an argument that you do hear. But yeah, no, there's a ongoing to this point controversy of the place of, I think, particularly fantasy. I mean, because Christian sci-fi. I mean, outside of C.S. Lewis, I don't think anybody's ever really made an honest attempt to write a distinctly Christian science fiction work. I mean, I
don't want to chap again, but like there's like some guy with a booth that has like a good stuff. It's not like it had a lot of Dune influence, but yeah, nothing mainstream.
Yeah, nothing mainstream. But fantasy has always been very controversial within the church, which is, I mean, which I always found very strange because, I mean, I always relate well to fantasy, but the fact that, of how really intense some people get against that, or even just the concept of fiction or imagination in general, is very, very interesting.
Well, like, there is, like, I understand, like, the aversion to quote-unquote magic, but I discussed this with you before, like, in terms of, like, there's much more magic in, like, Harry Potter, and I guess there probably aren't official RPG things for the Harry Potter universe, like license and all that stuff.
Probably, somewhere out there.
Yeah, but, like, I'm going to say this, like, the magic in Harry Potter isn't magic like that Wiccans would they believe. Like, Alan Moore would not say, like, Harry Potter is a good representative of religion any more than Buddhists are represented well by the Jedi Knights of Star Wars.
Right. It's yeah, no, like, just because we call something by the same thing, I mean, like, if you call a demon a ghost, is it really a ghost?
In Aspen Hotel is for marketing purposes.
Oh, well, we know. Hesben Hotel has a cosmology more confusing than real D&D.
Why doesn't Christianity condemn that? Like, we're all like, oh, it has been a Dungeons and Dragons, Harry Potter, like, Hesben Hotel. Cricket.
What's that? Oh, my word. How do you know about this? There's boobs in it. We can't have you knowing those exist.
One of the curses of living in the Northeast, you know about, like, well, you're not even a hipster, you know about all, like, the content, you're just not into it.
We know the content.
Behind the curve,
For the curve behind the curve.
Yeah. So Christianity is too obsessed with condemning Dungeons & Dragons and Harry Potter, but not Tasman Hotel.
Right, which was, like, the thing was, like, people were like, oh, there are demons in Dungeons & Dragons, but it's also like, well, yes, but they're evil. And we're supposed to, like, and we're not, and, like, allying with them is a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not really, that's another thing, like, just segue back into what I was saying, like, it's kind of like, yeah, there's a difference between, like, philosophically what you're portraying magic is. Like, in Harry Potter, like, you say a word that, like, means get up in Latin, and then, like, your room gets up. But in Wiccan, it's philosophically, like, you're saying a magic spell is like a mantra that you repeat to yourself, like, for 2 hours while meditating, so you can shift your mind and have a being take over you and channel power through you to make something levitate. That's completely different. Like, it's not even, like, constructed out of ignorance of that's, like, what magic is. It's like a completely fake system.
Right.
Like,
it's magical. It's fantastic.
It's like it's Dunsanian magic, not Alan Moore magic.
Yeah, no, it's like, to, like, talk about, like, like, Harry Potter, or, or C.S. Lewis, or J.R.R. or Tolkien, like, all of the, or even, what's his name?
Well, you like MacDonald.
I do like MacDonald. But, like, their idea of magic is those, like, magic is not even a thing or an entity or a power or a force. It's a state of being, which is, and how you interact with that is nothing like what we think of as, witchcraft or magic on Earth, and they would see that as some kind of foul magic, some kind of something evil, witchcraft, because it's not, and that that enchantment is always associated with a oneness with the moral upstandingness of the universe. Yeah, I'm not gonna use the I'm not playing the God card right now, but we'll say the moral upstandingness of the universe. We'll use that because, to be perfectly honest, it's really kind of hard to like always tell because you don't have direct Christian allegories in all their stories.
No, and I wouldn't want to anyway.
No, you don't want to because, I mean, let's be honest, allegory has a time and place, but if you have something that's inspired by or has parallels to something, that's not an allegory.
But with this thing with magic versus magic, magick,
Mm-hmm.
like there's also like this argument with like things with demons in it. And I've heard this argument from specific people. I'm not saying this is a hypothetical. Like, I have this friend, and you probably know who it is.
I do know who it is. Who
hates Has Been Hotel, and
yes.
hates things that like have demons in it or any sort of positive portrayal of paganism.
Mm-hmm.
And this person thinks that basically that they'll become demonically oppressed if they watch something like Has Been Hotel. Now, I actually technically agree with them.
Yeah, sure.
That if you like kind of buy into like what a show like Has Been Hotel would do, that like it's sort of like praising rebellion in a way. Like they're kind of like demons are the good guys, and there's a lot of like sexual humor and sexual like a lot of people who are into that like tend to be like the more sexually libertine among us. So if you buy into what it does, then like yeah, sure, like it's if it has like this pornographic moment in it, then yeah, like you're gonna get into the sin and then be demonically oppressed, but not by just watching it of itself.
Right,
but
again, I think that comes down to an individual spiritual decision, or spiritual feeling, because not everybody's affected the same way in all things. You know, as you know, I have played Pathfinder for 5 years, and never once have I desired to never once have I desired to summon Asmodeus in my basement. But there are people who can't either separate fiction from reality, or they feel that it leads them down a dark path, and for them, then of course that's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, a lot of the early Dungeons and Dragons came from like people who had like schizotypical personalities or something, like taking the game too seriously, from what I understand. Like some kid who like got lost behind a stadium or something.
So if I'm trying to remember correctly, there was somebody who got. I don't remember all the stories because so much of the stories has become urban legend.
Yeah.
They spread around. I know that there was one who, when one of their parents threw out like their character sheet, they like stabbed their parent with a sword and then committed suicide or something like that. Yeah, which is, and that person, that person had a long track record of like violent mental health problems.
It's kind of the same thing with video games in the 90s with Columbine. Like, remember when like before my time, I'm not millennial, but like Columbine, like the video games, The Matrix, and Marilyn Manson.
Manson, Doom,
yeah. Well, that was from another guy who said that killing people was like effing Doom, which was a different guy. I believe who was like an African American man who worked alone. But I think they might have.
Was that the post office?
I forget, but the Columbine kids might have been into Doom too, so that might have been like the link that was being drawn at the time.
Yeah, no. So the thing is, this conversation is still happening. People still want to know if GTA is responsible for crime rates rising, even though they're going down.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like, I think that we can probably safely say that the media we consume can be a reflection of the darker side of us, but does not dictate behavior. And like,
no, I mean, watching Has Been Hotel is not like reading the Satanic Bible or any type of what is referred to.
I'm Alistair Crowley! Playing Resident Evil does not make me a mad scientist.
You have your PhD of Silent Hill ology. Yeah.
So, as for tabletop RPGs, I went into them very worried. Even though I was kind of feeling rebellious, like, we snuck around, we hid a lot of, like, what we were doing early on, because, like, we were afraid.
Were you scared of, like, something demonic or like or what?
I was scared that they would be full of weird people, but I think for me, watching people actually play the game on, actually like watching people play the game made me think like, oh, they're just doing like normal adventure-y things. They're not. Yeah. And it's also like, you know, as the dungeon master of you control what's in your game. Nothing demonic is going to get into your game unless you put it there. Like if you're if you're playing with somebody you trust and somebody that, you know, you have like a spiritual confidence in, there is nothing remotely dangerous about it. Actually, there's probably something beneficial to come from it.
Yeah, taking DMT and chanting a mantra and meditating is probably not going to help your campaign setting.
Yeah, no, like, trust me, you know, you know, we had to call off the good old peyote smoking and pentagram drawing festival this year, but so I do love the fact that you kind of bring this up. Is like it was only a thing in the thing people is like the counter D&D thing wasn't a thing until the 1980s, even though D&D had been out for a decade.
Yeah, like you kind of had the I think a lot of it was like Cold War stuff against like what they saw as another form of counterculture, like rock and roll in the 50s. Like the more majority suburban and country evangelicals of that era. And you also had during this time the what was been deemed historically as a daycare sex abuse hysteria, which
I vaguely remember it.
Operating in like Floridian and Californian daycares at the time that included satanic ritual. So there's kind of like this Satanist craze, and heavy metal. There were some of the first heavy metal, black metal or death metal or whatever it's called, who were legitimately talking about Satanism though. But other than that, there's most here. It seemed like.
Yeah, there was that movement within music, which oddly enough has not persisted as much as you would expect it to.
No.
But yeah, no, it was kind of an age where there was kind of that as a reflex against, I don't know, I guess an age that really did try to push a more wholesome image against, you know, the malaise of the 1970s and the chaos of the 60s. And then you kind of play that in with Jack Chick, who is who's kind of a staple of fundamentalist Christianity.
So that it's not really a straw man. And his Dark Dungeons script came out in 1984.
Yeah.
And that came 2 years before the Tom Hanks movie with I forget what it was called. I think it was Mazes and Monsters. You know.
Can't say I've ever seen it. I've not heard that it was very good.
Early 80s horror.
What?
Early 80s horror is even great or terrible. You either got like The Thing or that.
Yeah. But so like Dark Dungeons, like Jack Chick is Jack Chick has a lot of opinions. Some of which would be, you know, traditionally Christian. Some of which are not. He was not known for being a great theological mind. But like, so the thing about that is, I think you can see that was sort of clearly a case of I don't even know if you could call it yellow journalism, because it's not really journalism, but it was.
Not really anything one specific. It's not like tabloid news.
Yeah, it was written without even cursory research, and that's pretty obvious, I think, by anybody who reads it later.
I've actually read. I had somebody in my family had one of those tracks, and I read through it, and like it literally like it starts out as like a parody of like Dungeons and Dragons, and they don't call it that, but then it literally inconsistently calls it the parody name, and Dungeons and Dragons in the same strip, like just interchangeably.
Yeah, and then it's like it's about like, you know, casting magic in real life and people. It's like so like my thought is like, look, Jack, if there was a board game that could let real witches shoot bolts of fire from their hands, don't you think we'd be on this already? Don't you think we'd have figured this out by now? But no, okay, so as you were saying, you know, this has a lot to do with fundamental Christianity, which has a lot to do with low church culture. You mentioned this, which is
Well, yeah, I'm low church culture. Like I'm Reformed Baptist,
Right.
16. I don't go to a Reformed Baptist church.
Uh-huh.
Like I'll just be frank. I'm not into the mass. I'm not into sacramentalism, sacramentalism. But I like RPGs. So like, the thing that I'm like just low church but not fundamentalist. The reason why I'm okay with RPGs because I am interested in RPGs.
Right. Yes, and you have absolutely every right to be. And I am a high church person, and I think that having that I guess having less of a necessary tie to rationalism, or having less influence of rationalism in the further reformations of the Protestant Church.
I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but do you think that maybe more of a less legalistic continuationist and Pentecostal group would maybe be possibly have more of an interest in RPGs and fantasy literature in general? Because like they're like really into like supernatural miracles.
Right.
And, I don't know. Like I'm not saying you're wrong. I just wonder what the data is on that. Like if there's.
I would have no idea, but I mean, like, hey, if you're Pentecostal, I mean, every day is a fantasy novel, so there's my controversial statement for the podcast. No disrespect to our Pentecostal brothers and sisters. I don't know, because I think on one hand you could say that that would connect more with people in that sphere, but then again you could also think that like subtext in literature could be very more threatening to them, or seem more threatening to them, because it would be...
Yeah, a lot of them are so conservative, and there are a lot of in like Appalachia, the South. So maybe ones outside of that though. But sometimes they really swing from like very liberal and leftist to like very conservative, like in Pentecostal Church International. Yeah. But yeah, I really think the data is on that. So yeah, I'm not just trying to make you feel less unique, but I'm just saying like I know what you're saying. I'm just wondering like, hey, if that's the case, high church, like less rationalistic, then maybe more continuationist, charismatic, Pentecostal might also be more into that.
It does make a lot of sense. I think it does. So how do I explain you? I explain you because you are somebody who is interested in imagination. You're interested in seeing concepts worked out, and like you said, you're interested in ideas. And it's ultimately RPGs are games of ideas, and they're people exploring ideas. So I think that's why. I do always think that fantasy has always had a higher connection with I'd say more historical, more patriotic Reformation bodies. I'd say especially the Church of England and fantasy have always been...
oh yeah, of course.
Have always been very close. However, I do think that, for the more latter Reformation churches, they've always had a little bit more of a focus on immediacy and reality, and I think they've produced... I think that they tend to produce a lot of the non-fiction stuff. Where was I going with this? Let's move on to the questions.
Question time. Me first?
Go for it.
Okay. So when I'm going through an entire writer's canon, it's interesting noticing a single unifying theme throughout their work, at least that can occasionally be identified, or like the most. Like many have noticed that Stanley Kubrick's work has been had the overarching theme in all his movies of dehumanization. And I would say for my fiction it would be something like humanity's ridiculous, stupid, and Luciferian attempt to play or be God. Would you say that you at least notice an overarching theme in all your works, or maybe it's too early?
That's a really good literary question. I'd have to say that if I had to say if there was a theme, I think mine would probably be the fragility of reality. Or the survival of civilization. sort of like the civilization versus wilderness conflict.
Would you say mine is man's attempt to play God?
Yeah.
From what you told me?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Definitely. I think that shows up. So my question for you is, what novel or what novel universe would you like to see be made into a RPG video game?
Oh, that's hard.
Yes.
I feel like if the Wheel of Time was made into that, it'd be actually more enjoyable because you would have to cut content just because the fact you're making something for. Not a video game RPG was made that, but like a tabletop was made for that.
Oh,
though.
Wheel of Time tabletop. Interesting.
Yeah, probably the 90s from what I understand. Probably out of print and all that.
Probably out of print, you get like your 750-page rulebook manual with the 250-page lore addendum.
Boy.
Oh boy. All right. So you've a very interesting second question.
Yeah, what's your plan if cancel culture comes after you for whatever reason?
I mean, I guess it kind of depends on the reason. I mean, I don't think there are too many reasons to cancel me. I don't do a whole lot.
I don't think anyone's going to call you racist. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I do my best. I mean, like, I generally think that, you can avoid it by being, I think that, for the large part, just being a decent person and treating people treating people well who you disagree with. On anything.
Not enough though. But at the same time, I feel like it's going to be obvious if you like.
Yeah, I think that's at least sort of the first defense is that you treat people well and that you always be honest about what you really think, even if people don't like it. Showing that you are an honest person and explaining your reasoning behind things would do well. And I think that also part of the thing is high stress situations tend to show you who you really are. And, this is actually interesting is that, recently actually at work we had to take, we took,
personality test?
No, bias test to see if we were biased against certain things. And as I found out, I was, actually biased in the opposite way I thought I would, that I ever kind of suspected that I would come back on tests.
I heard those tests aren't used in like court situations.
Yeah, no, I no matter what they said on the website about how much they trust their methodology, I still think it's dubious. I mean, it's not exactly
It's like the ink blot test. Like it is kind of like studying projection, but
right, the ink blot test has an actual scientific application. But the question is, it only works if you're doing it properly. Which is kind of a shame, because people make fun of the inkblot test all the time, but the inkblot test is actually, clinically has been largely successful over the course of its existence when applied correctly. But no, so I think that certain things that you should. Treat people with kindness, and even if that's not enough, and the question is, can you really have a plan? I mean, the plan is that some people come back from it, some people don't. I mean, I guess the kind of thing is, I mean, I'm trying to think of people have tried and failed, I think, to cancel people. Yeah. I think there's probably been more cancel and fails.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe it's kind of over. Doxing is more the thing.
Yeah, doxing is scarier. Though I think, if we can take something from the pro-Jared cancel situation, save the receipts. Save the receipts. Know what you did. Don't put yourself in stupid situations. And be aware of what you're doing. Treat everybody well. Don't put yourself in stupid situations. And if something does come up, face it head on, and answer it for what it is. I mean, there's not really much else you can do. You're trying to reason with a mob that probably half the time is wrong.
Or hypocritical.
Yes, that's true. Cancel culture is ultimately, and trust me, because they do not care about your political affiliation. They do not care about, you know, what you've done in your life. They don't care whether you are Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, white, black, pink, purple. If you do something that is wrong, they'll hunt you down for it. I think people can survive it. I think people do survive it because I think in hindsight, even people in the mob can see that not all the time, because there are people who do rotten things and get run out of town on a rail. That's happened for all of history, and it's probably never going to stop happening. But for people who were done wrongly so, I think that they do have a pretty good history of coming back, even though it comes with pretty big psychological toll. But, so yeah, just like, that's kind of the extent of my reasoning when it comes to that.
Okay.
My final question for you is that when it comes to online culture, do you think online culture is itself a counterculture, or has it become a normative culture?
It's become normative for Generation Z, but before that, no. The fact that people can miss major things happening on it, the fact that it's not. But I would say once Generation Z grows up, then it will become normative. But it's only for Z and millennials and before. I mean, yeah, and after, rather.
That makes sense. Alright, so this has been a very meandering but very interesting episode of Behind the Curve. So again, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Matt.
Hey, I didn't call myself Matt this time. Have a great week, everybody.